Excellent. So now that the technical issue has been resolved. So, tervehdys vaan kaikille. My name is Linus Linsén. I'm the current chairman of Varsinais-Suomen Akseli, and I will be representing Finland in this conference. Varsinais-Suomen Akseli is a nationalist youth organization based in Finland, in the coastal city of Turku, and I will be giving my speech on 3 subjects today. First, I will talk about the relationship between Finland and the Balto-Finnic peoples inhabiting Russia. Second of all, I will be talking about historical injustices that our Balto-Finnic brethren have faced under Russian imperialism and chauvinism. And third, I will be talking about what Finland, both as a nation and a sovereign state, could do to alleviate the suffering of our brethren kindred and help advance their interests. So, to begin with some historical background, Finland has had a strong relationship with the Karelian and Ingrian geographic regions and the people inhabiting them. Not only do we share our national epic with them and most similar languages, but we have also fought side by side against the Eastern Menace and its imperialist ambitions. When Finland gained our independence shortly after that, there were several thousands Finnish volunteers that rushed over the border to fight against the Bolshevik invaders in Karelia and Estonia and Ingria. And although there were several thousand fighters over the border, they unfortunately failed in their ultimate goal of an independent Karelia due to having to face a superior enemy both in their numbers and equipment while fighting grueling guerrilla warfare in the dense forests of Karelia without any or much logistical support after the Treaty of Tartu. But although the goal of an Karelia independent of Russian influence wasn't achieved then, it was not all in vain, as there were several other expeditions that had far more success, most notably the Finnish expeditions during the Estonian War of Independence, in which Finnish forces saw major and internationally noteworthy success in fighting the invading Bolshevik hordes of the newly established Red Army forces in the Estonian and Ingrian soil during the years 1918 and 1919. Despite the lack of training, equipment and numerosity of the Finnish volunteer forces, we saw great success in aiding our Estonian brothers in arms, both in their southern and eastern advance, with relatively minor casualties. The reason why I emphasize these 2 expeditions back to back is to make an upcoming point in my speech. Namely, that Finland has what it takes to make a difference in advancing the interests and freedom of our kindred folk suffering under Russian imperialism even today. It just takes the combination of opportunity, the will of the people of Finnic nations to work together, and the political will of our government to commit to advancing interests of our kindred nations. Estonian and Karelian expeditions are perfectly analogous of what happens when the stars align in this regard and an independence of a nation is achieved with actions of solidarity versus what happens when one of those crucial components is lacking. The Estonian people, with some Finnish help, were able to expel the Russian invaders out of their lands, while the Karelian people faced the unfortunate fate of Russian subjugation due to adverse circumstances burdened by the ongoing famine going at the time. Finland, on the other hand, due to lack of resources and political will of the centrist government, fell victim to the Muscovite vices, as we trusted them keeping in their word in ensuring the autonomy of the Karelian and Ingrian peoples inhabiting Russia, in exchange of Finland agreeing not to pursue the territorial expansion into these regions and promoting a pan-nationalist ideal of then achieving independence from the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. Since Finland had faced the same Russian terror before in the form of the Great Wrath, Russification efforts, and Ostrobothnian genocide, Finland, as a Balto-Finnic nation that had just recently gained its independence and freedom, sought after to spare our kindred nations from such fates ever again. Sadly, the state of our kinfolk proves our fear was justified, as the Muscovite government continued its cruel experiments with peoples it still has access to. So, now that we have established that there is both historical and current presidents in Finland correcting her prior mistakes in protecting the freedom of especially the Karelian and Ingrian peoples, as well as the interest of other ethnic minorities under Russian imperialism, the question remains, how? Personally, I think there is so much more that the Republic of Finland should do right now, but only lacks the political will to do so. Finland should dispute the Russian claims to areas that we lost to the Soviet Union during the winter and continuation wars, calling them out for what they are, illegitimate, illegal, and imperialist. Finland should use her diplomatic leverages that come with the membership of several international organizations and our relatively good reputation that we have accrued during our time as an independent nation to help our kindred nations in fighting the Russian suppression of the opposition of these ethnic groups, and to bring attention to the plight of our people there. We should also call out the silent soft genocide and Russification of these non-Russian ethnicities and the political imprisonment of them. Most importantly, Finland should take an actively harder line against the rogue state based in Kremlin and its current crimes against the Ukrainian people and world order, peace and stability by closing the border, sanctioning those who are most responsible for these crimes even harsher, and making it as difficult as possible for agents of the Putin regime to operate within our borders, while simultaneously and actively providing refuge for those anti-Kremlin Finno-Ugric activists to continue their operations on our soil, despite the persecution they face in their currently occupied homelands. All of these are measures that our government most certainly has the capacity to do right now, yet refuses to do so due to decades of Soviet influence and its disastrous effects that we have the misfortune of having to live with. Since the collapse of Russian Federation under its own weight is inevitable due to its demographic trends, etc., Finland must be prepared to restore that order in areas where our brethren nations reside, as the sequential chaos and disorder ensues. In that case, Finland should commit military and economic aid to the Karelian, Mari, Mokshan, Ersion, etc. nations, for them to establish stable rule and proper self-defense against Russian irredentism. Furthermore, Finland, equipped with a highly educated population of around 5.5 million people, should have the capacity to provide valuable institutional expertise to these nations that may, due to both the lack of population and conscious effort of the Russian Federation to hinder the education and development of these peoples, be unable to fulfill all the institutional requirements to run a stable country at first. Educating the local populations in statesmanship, military proficiency, and international diplomacy would be first and foremost priority for Finland to aid these newly independent nations institutionally. Finland would also be morally and strategically well advised to provide enough military assistance, either in direct or indirect form, for these regions to secure their sovereignty until they are able to hold their own against the Russian threat independently. Failure to do so during the moment of truth would lead to the repetition of the same fate for the very same nations that had their ambitions of independence crushed by the same Muscovite forces during the Russian Civil War. It is important to discuss these issues today, as it's most timely as it has been since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Back then, many nations had seized the day and declared and achieved their independence successfully, while others were not as lucky despite their brave efforts. Back then, the Finnish government could have brought up the Karelian question and spearheaded the negotiations and efforts to free our kindred nations in Russia, yet decided to sit on its hands, impotently witnessing the re-establishment of the Russian order. Now, as a result of this passivity, several of these nations are facing eventual threat of extinction if their current demographic trends are not to be reversed. Yet, while the situation may seem dire, hope still remains, as with chaos emerges new order of things. The failed Russian special military operation has exposed the weakness of this has-been superpower to the whole world, and thus Kremlin's hand has been forced to take more drastic measures to save face than they initially intended. Partial mobilization has been announced by Putin this week, and with it, a whole new can of worms has been opened as a result. Sure, the Ukrainian situation could possibly be resolved with additional 300,000 Ivan Conscriptoviches, but then again, this may as well be just the needed kick in the door that results in the eventual crashing down of this whole rotten structure. Only time will tell what opportunities raise their heads with this current development, and until then, we need to remain vigilant and prepared for it, lest we want to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. With this in mind, we can only as individual peoples mostly remain patient, while hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. I end my speech in these words: long live the free nations of post-Russia, glory to the brave soldiers fighting the Muscovite hordes on the rightfully Ukrainian soil right now, and death to the criminal regime of Kremlin. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I hope for a good rest of the conference for you all participating today.